you, right? You can listen.
Yes, I can listen to you.
Okay, it's live already.
Good evening. My name is Barsha Mondal. I am a part-time lecturer in the Department of English, Rabindra Bharati University, Center for Distance and Online Learning, and I have with me Ms. Antara Patro, who is a teacher at a senior secondary school in Kolkata. Both of us welcome you to the stories of tribal identity and culture that will explore the role of tribal history and tribal representation in history in shaping cultural identity and ideology. Curated under TMYS Review December 2024 in collaboration with the Center for Asia Pacific Initiatives, University of Victoria. We are also calling for submissions of essays, poems, and short stories under the project. To know more about the submission guidelines and the project architecture, please visit www.tellmeyourstory.biz. This evening, I consider myself very privileged to be in the company of our esteemed panelists, Raju Dhuli and Margaret Lyngdoh, who will shortly share their views with us. The topic for today's discussion is role of education and environment in cross-culturalization of tribal communities. Before we begin, Ms. Patro would introduce our speakers. Over to you, Antara. Oh,
Yeah.
uh,
Thank
our
you.
uh, our third speaker for the session is Kumerjit Chajgotra. Now, Antara will introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Barsha, for introducing me and to give this opportunity to introduce the speakers. Our first speaker for the session is Raju Dhuli. Raju Dhuli is a PhD scholar in English language teaching at IIT Bhubaneswar. He holds an MA in English from Central University of Andhra Pradesh and has excelled in UGC NET in linguistics in 2019. His research initiated in 2021 and his targets include improving speaking skills among rural secondary school students. He has over 9 research papers in international journals and conferences to his credit. His research interests include vocabulary development, reading skills, speaking skills, and SN8. We are delighted to have you on the panel, Mr. Raju Dhuli. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our
Thank you so
second
much.
speaker for the session, welcome. Our second speaker for the session is Margaret Lyngdoh. Margaret Lyngdoh is a researcher of indigenous folklore at the Department of Estonian and Comparative Folklore, University of Tallinn. She defended her PhD in 2016 and has since been awarded several research grants. She has published multiple research articles in international peer-reviewed journals. Her research interests include indigeneity, folklore, and liminal ontologies. Very warm welcome to Ms. Lyngdoh. Thank you for joining us this evening. Our third speaker for the session is Ms. Kumerjit Chajgotra. Ms. Kumerjit Chajgotra is a media academician working in Jammu University for past 2 years. She is also an anchor presenter at Prasar Bharati for Doordarshan Jammu. Her PhD work is in the field of subaltern and media, contributing towards media literacy. Now we will open the forum for discussion, and I would request Mr. Raju Dhuli to share his insights. Sir, over to you. Mr. Raju Dhuli, you can start the talk, and if you need the PPT, you can ask for the PPT now.
Okay, first, I would like to share my screen. Just let me know.
Yeah, you can start.
Is it visible, my PPT?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Yes, now it's visible.
Yes,
Okay.
it's visible.
Is it in full mode, the PPT?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for introducing me, Miss Antara Patro. It's really great pleasure to take part in this panel discussion on the role of art, education, and environment in cross-culturalization of tribal communities. And today, it gives me immense pleasure in talking about the empowering tomorrow's leaders and the tribal educational schemes and increasing awareness among tribal youth. So this is today's presentation I would like to give. The first one is the outline of the presentation, which includes understanding the challenges faced by the tribal youth in accessing education and existing educational schemes target at tribal communities, which is followed by increasing awareness among tribal youth, and also which is also followed by engaging stakeholders. And finally, this presentation will be ended by what are the overcoming, I mean, how to overcome challenges and ensuring equity. So coming to the challenges of tribal youth in accessing education, the first one is that as we know that tribal youth having come from remotest areas, they grapple with many issues, a number of issues like poverty, malnutrition, lack of access to quality education, inadequate infrastructure, and so healthcare services, which really impact their socio-economic progress and development. And the second is that and these tribal communities, as they live in poverty, which limits access to educational resources, and also which in turn creates pressure for children to work instead of they're supposed to attend schools, but they are forced to work for the benefit and for the improvement of their own family. And also these tribal areas, from the tribal areas where the tribal youth have come from tribal areas, they are lagging behind basic educational infrastructure such as schools, libraries, and also transportation facilities. And coming to fourth point is that even when you look at the schools in tribal areas, which are often, which often suffer from a lack of qualified teachers, lack of teaching materials, or inadequate learning materials. At the same time, even the tribal communities often have limited representation in policy making bodies, and also which in turn leads to negligency of their specific educational needs and unique educational needs. And another problem they're facing is that the educational curriculum, when you observe keenly, the educational curriculum is also not often tailored or not assigned with the cultural context of tribal communities, which in turn leads to a disconnect and lack of engagement. And the last but not the least, the problem is that in the remote areas where you talk about tribal areas, the teacher absence is a predominant problem, which is faced by the tribal youth, and which also which is largely affects the quality of the education. So coming to education schemes targeted tribal communities, before I delve into what are the existing educational schemes that are helpful and beneficial for tribal communities, it is important to understand what are why it is important. I mean, what are the educational schemes? Why they are important? This is that the tribal education schemes represent a pivotal avenue for uplifting and empowering indigenous communities, and these initiatives aim to bridge the educational gap by providing specialized programs tailored to the unique cultural, linguistics, and socio-economic needs of tribal youth. And also, uh, these schemes are very crucial in order to raise awareness among tribal youths. And the last but not the least is the tribal education schemes can through not only empower but also equip indigenous youth or tribal youth to navigate a rapidly changing world by preserving their rich cultural heritage. Coming to the existing educational schemes or scholarship available for the tribal youth, the first one is that Siksha Sri. It is a pre-metric scholarship scheme for ST students from families with annual income of less than 2.5 lakhs. And also under this scheme, the government provides financial assistance to students from class 6th to class 10th in order to cover their educational expenses, be it a tuition fee, textbook, and also uniforms. And we have another scholarship which is also known as pre-metric scholarship to ST students who are reading in classes 9th to 10th. And this scheme provides financial assistance to meritorious ST students from families with annual income of less than 4.5 lakhs, and this scholarship is awarded to those students from class 9th and class 10th who secure higher marks in their previous examinations. And coming to, we have another type of scholarship for ST students, which is a post-metric scholarship. And this post-metric scholarship provides financial assistance to ST students who are pursuing post-matriculation students, class 9th onward, class 11th onwards in recognized institutions. And this scholarship try to cover tuition fees, maintenance allowances, and other expenses. Coming to Adivasi Shiksha Rin Yojana, this is a loan scheme for ST students who wants to pursue higher education. This scheme aims to provide loans for tuition fees, books, and other educational expenses, and also educational materials. And these loans are repayable after the students completes their education and secures employment. So coming to hostel facilities, and the Development Department provides hostel facilities for ST students at various levels of education. This department provide different hostel facilities such as accommodation, food, other essential amenities to the students from tribal areas and those who come from economically disadvantaged families. And also, in the same department, also offers coaching for JEE, Joint Entrance Examination, also NEET, National Eligibility Entrance Test, to the students of tribal youth, I mean tribal students who wants to aspire to pursue higher education both in engineering and also medical fields. So we have another Merit Cum scholarship schemes. The same department implements various Merit Cum means scholarship for ST students. These schemes provide financial assistance to meritorious students from economically disadvantaged families. And also we have different types of schools, which is one of them is Ekalavya Model Residential School, and EMRS are residential schools which are prime exclusively established for ST students in remote and tribal dominated areas. And these schools provide quality education and try to impart education for class 6th to class 11th, 12th. Coming to another type of school is Pandit Raghunath Murmu Abasik School. This school is also residential school for ST girls from class 6th to 12th. And this kind of schools provide quality education and also a nurturing environment for girls for marginalized communities. Coming to another type of school is that Balpahari Residential Government Girls High School. This school is also a residential school for ST girls from class 6th to 10th, and this school exclusively provides quality education and a supportive environment for girls from rural areas. So this is all about the existing scholarships and existing schemes initiated by Government of India, which are targeted tribal youth. So coming to, as a part of this presentation, it's also important to understand how to increase, how to create awareness among tribal youth in order to help them benefit out of these schemes, these governmental educational schemes. The first one is that there are two main strategies in order to increase awareness among tribal youth. The first one is that it is important to increase social media presence in tribal areas, and also it's also important to conduct more community-based programs, which involves, awareness can also be heightened by disseminating information through community outreach programs and workshops, and also training programs and awareness campaigns, and also digital platforms. Even when we talk about increasing awareness, the role of technology and the digital platforms cannot be ignored, because these two aspects play a very significant role in disseminating and imparting knowledge about the existing tribal initiatives. So coming to education phase, interactive sessions with local leaders and collaborations with tribal organizations also play a very significant role in informing and letting the tribal use about the opportunities available to them, so that they can leverage these opportunities. They can also benefit out of them. So coming to as a part of increasing awareness, as a part of collaborating with the stakeholders. It is important to engage stakeholders in the process of creating awareness among the rural youth. Tribal youth. The first one is that tribal communities, as we know, that tribal communities reside in a remote areas with a limited access to information. So taking this in aspect into consideration, engaging stakeholders such as local leaders, educators, and community organizations definitely make sure that information about educational schemes reaches these communities. And the second is that why it is important to, when we tend to explain why it is important to engage stakeholders in the dissemination of knowledge among tribal youth, it is important because many educational schemes you can take, they always remain underutilized due to lack of awareness. When there is a lack of awareness on the part of the tribal youth, they are less aware of them. That don't try to make use of the existing policy, existing schemes. As a result, it is important that by engaging stakeholders to spread information, the utilization of these resources increases, also leading to better educational outcomes on the part of the tribal youth. Coming to the third point is that even you talk about, when we talk about engaging stakeholders, there is a very significant role which is played by NGOs in service delivery, complementing government efforts, and also advocating for policy reforms and that prioritize tribal rights, welfare, and also holistic development, also improvement. So this is engaging stakeholders. That's why it's important to engage stakeholders in the process of creating awareness among tribal youth about the existing educational tribal initiatives and schemes. So coming to, there is also another important aspect, that is through initiative, through training programs, skill development initiatives, awareness campaigns, tribal communities definitely get empowered for their rights and access resource. And through initiatives focused on education, healthcare, skill development, and cultural preservation, NGOs also contribute to building resilient and empowered tribal communities. So, even efforts by the government and also NGOs aiming to bridge educational disparities by establishing schools is also important in rural areas, which in turn promote indigenous languages and also incorporate tribal culture into educational curriculum are significant when we talk about tribal empowerment and upliftment. So coming to our, how do, as we know that even though there are so many educational initiatives initiated by the government, still there are some challenges, being faced by the tribal youth. So that's why it is significant. It's also important that we need to understand how to surmount those challenges faced by the rural youth, and also make sure equity among them. The first, so in order to overcome these challenges, the first one that we need to do is to establish more schools and libraries and vocational training, and providing and conduct more vocational training centers, and also providing scholarship, more scholarship, and also educational materials, and also organizing health camps and medical clinics to address the healthcare needs of the tribal populations, and also promoting inclusive education. That's very important aspect. Promoting inclusive education is also important aspect of overcoming challenges, and also addressing the needs of marginalized groups within the tribal communities. And also it's also important to recommend policies, policy recommendations for fostering and imparting equitable access to education is also part and parcel of tribal empowerment. And also the attitude of, it's also important to counsel and also guide the tribal parents towards the importance of education, because majority of the tribal youth are more or less illiterate, that they have lower literacy rates, so which imparts which affects their ability to support their own children education. In that case, NGOs or the local leaders should take initiatives to counsel, to guide the parents of the tribal youth for the education of their own children. So finally, it's important to offer language support programs. There is a gap between indigenous languages and the language of instruction. So in order to bridge this gap, it's important to offer language support programs. So that's why it's important to offer language support programs. So this is all about the now today's presentation. These are some of the references you can go through in order to know more about educational schemes and more about the challenges that are being faced by the rural youth. I mean, tribal youth. Thank you so much. Uh, Before concluding this
Thank you.
presentation, yeah, I would like to take this opportunity for providing me this wonderful opportunity where I can share my insights and disseminate my knowledge about the tribal schemes that are tailored to tribal youth. Thank you so much, one and all. I will be happy to receive questions and also will be happy to answer these questions.
Okay. Uh, Thank you for this presentation and for this detailed observation on the topic. We will go forward into question answering session and when all the
Yeah, sure.
speakers have given their talk. Yeah, so now I would request Barsha to welcome the next speaker. Over to you, Barsha.
Before that, I would like to thank Mr. Raju Dhuli once. I think even today, many of us are not aware of the number of schemes that are there to empower tribal youth.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
your discussion led me to think
sure.
about all of that. So many things. So our next
Yeah, sure.
speaker for the session is Miss Margaret Lyngdoh. Ma'am, over to you now.
Thank you so much. So, hello, organizers, fellow panelists, and dear audience and listeners. So, today I have been tasked with talking on the topic of environmental consciousness in tribal art and literature. So, I'm repeating this environmental consciousness in tribal art and literature. So, let me begin by unpacking the words in the topic environmental and then consciousness. Okay, first, the topic of environment presumes a nature culture binary that is inherently how knowledge frameworks in the West are organized. Second, let's take a look at the word consciousness, which again assumes that there is a binary opposite of unconsciousness. Let me also reflect on the word art and literature. Who decides what are valid forms of art and what is literature? So if I were to transcribe an orally transmitted text onto the written medium, would you still call it a work of art? High poetry? Okay, please bear with me in this exercise, okay? Because I think that it is only by breaking down and re-examining frameworks through which we are trained to look at the categories of art and literature and great traditions and little traditions, which we are trained, like, can we realize how much of the way that we think is dedicated by what I now recognize to be the Western paradigm. But that is the problem, right? I mean, how can I use outsider, non-relevant categories and apply them to cultures, traditions, and practices that do not presume binaries? Nowadays, no. The word used is nature, the world around us. Nature is presented as passive, pure, helpless, even, and without agency. Us humans are the ones who exploit nature, right? But let's take a look at the floods, the landslides, and the havoc that nature wreaks on us seasonally. Okay? I would like to speak from the perspective of the indigenous communities of northeastern India. For example, no? Kasi people have interesting relationships with the world around. Nature is inside a Kasi person. It's not a binary category. They cannot be separated from where they come from. And one manifestation of this is the kinship organization. So, Kasi relationships with, and let me state this clearly, aspects of nature. Okay, Kasi relations with aspects of nature, not nature as a whole, because nature is not a monolithic construct. Nature is porous, permeable, and with agency. And aspects of nature are governed by the manifestations of it. For example, I'll give you an example. Human, snake, transformation traditions reflect Kasi relationships with water and ways of negotiating the damage that is caused by water during the monsoon season. Narratives and experiences of possession by water entities exemplify the existence of a liminal ontology, by which I mean parallel realities that can only be accessed into during special states of being, like, I don't know, sleep. You get very sick, you go into the alternate reality. So, indigenous worldviews acknowledge liminal ontologies as ordinary and normative realms. And this was all that I had to tell you about the way that we look at nature, art, and literature. And I ask you to question these categories so that other forms of art can be acknowledged. This is all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that discussion. Our next speaker for the session is Ms. Kumerjit Chajgotra. Ma'am, over to you now.
Am I audible right now?
Yes, yes.
Sorry, first of all, I'm really sorry for joining in a little late. I was the first panelist, but never mind. Thank you so much, my fellow panelists, for covering up for me and starting this session. First of all, thank you so much. I'm Kumerjit Chajgotra, and I just got stuck in a little bit of traffic, but that also made me think about today's topic on a much better level. When I was given this, topic, that indigenous knowledge system and how it is influencing sustainable development and cultural heritage. And when we think it in the perspective of tribals only, I think first of all we have segregated tribal people from us, but we were the tribal people. We were living in these communities. We were very small communities, as my fellow panelists, the human and snake relationship. Indeed, we have that same relationship with our gods and deities and goddesses, but somewhere we have limited it to our worship pattern rather than bringing it to our lifestyle, because we have started living in concrete houses, and we have, especially, I would like to mention this, especially in the region where I come from. I come from Jammu and Kashmir, and in Jammu region we have dedicated spaces. There's some, some formation, natural formations, where we never, we never flow when we are doing agriculture. These are some of the we feel that this is some formation of soil which we never meddle with, just because we think that it is something godly. There are snakes there, and we revert them, so we never touch them. But we bring it to the limit where we just worship them. They are not part of our lifestyle anymore. But when it comes to tribals, my research work, of course, I am here because of my research work. And when I visited those hamlets, the group I was, my focus group was the Bakarwal tribes from Jammu region. And I have to mention that what kind of a relationship they have with soil, with the nature, is so pure and so close to the nature that we have forgotten. So we were also the same tribal people, but we are not anymore. We are the part of civilization with concretization. And when we talk about indigenous knowledge system, we also had that. Now, what we are trying to find out, what tribal people have, what knowledge they have. Let's find out and let's explore them. We'll find new indigenous ways for sustainable development. But when we will try to bring them out of that, or we want to develop the kind of definition we have for our development, then we'll bring them out of that, culture of living, sustaining livelihood. We really think that we will leave them the same indigenous group? We are exploring them. Why we are making them focus groups? They'll become like us. We somewhere want to make them homogeneous. So our perspective or our research, most of us, we are trying to do this research, that how we develop them without changing their whole culture, because we want to keep it safe. The culture they follow, in their dressing sense, in their in their lifestyle, their relationships, their food culture. But is that possible? There is a very fine line. I remember when I started my research, my professor told me that, Kumerjit, you are going there and trying to talk to these women in the hamlets, in deras. We call it deras, the small small group of people where they stay. They move from one place to another, if I may elaborate. So wherever they move seasonally, in winters they come to Jammu, these tribal groups. In winters they come to Jammu for fodder for their cattle, and in winters they go back to in summers they go back to Kashmir. So they make small hamlets in each of these spaces. That's why their education is hampered, as my first fellow panelist mentioned very beautifully, that the kind of education system we want to provide them, especially in Jammu Kashmir, where they are transhuman, they are moving from one place to another, it becomes a little more strategically more tedious to bring education to them, to make sure that teachers are available, the standardized teacher which we want to have throughout the session. That is not possible, because a teacher will not move. If I'm from Jammu, I cannot move to Kashmir after every 6 months, because I do have a family here. I have a social setup here. So to move with them, they allocated in a lot of schemes. They allocated some of the educated students from them, among them those who can move with them. But it was not sustainable for a long time, because as soon as you get educated, you don't want to move in kacha houses. You don't want to stay in that uh, house made of muds. You want to have a different lifestyle, and there's a lot of you know um, back and forth about it, because you want to get settled, because we cannot be in that space. If we want to develop ourselves, if I have health facility, I have financial stability, I want to have a better life for my children, I want to settle in a space. And that is a great hurdle, I would say. We are not able to you know think beyond it. Even we are able to think beyond it, but we are not having the right solution. When we talk about indigenous knowledge, sustainable development, and cultural heritage, they're already interlinked. We don't have to think them differently. Wherever there is indigenous knowledge system, means they understand the nature around them, they have developed their cultures around. That's why different group of people around the world had different kind of culture, because whether it is related to their food habits of eating vegetarian, non-vegetarian, this animal or not that animal, this kind of differences, the kind of clothing they are wearing, the clothing we have is also determined by the same kind of environmental factor, geographical factor, social factors, obviously evolved over the period of time. But our culture is also derived from this indigenous knowledge system. That, and I remember I read it that in one of my readings, that how culture is something which we pass on, some kind of an information, knowledge we pass on generation after generation, whichever worked for us. So anything which will not work for me, I'll never pass it on to my son or my daughter. But if I have passed on some indigenous knowledge in the form of oral communication, in the form of some poems, some stories, definitely it has some kind of impact, some kind of relevance, whether it is how they are predicting. I remember when I went to these hamlets, they were able to predict. I used to go in the evening, because as I told you, they were the herdsmen. So they used to be out and about in the whole day. It was very tedious for me, and going uh, in a strange new place, and with new people, obviously to build their trust, and especially in a state like Jammu and Kashmir, where already there is a lot of different kinds of turbulence, political turbulence, and related to violence also. So it was has to be very strategically planned because I have to visit them in the evening. And they used to predict that what day it is, and sometimes they don't know how to use their social media. Some of them they do know. One of the most important revelation my research had was that yes, they are using media. A lot of times we are saying that they don't have access to media. No, they do have access to social media. I would say the digital mobile media has transformed everything, and they are part of it. But now, how will we actually preserve this indigenous, their cultures and their way of life? That will be a big question, because they already follow a very indigenous way of life. I remember I went to their hamlet, and they already live in nuclear families. They don't live in joint families as we can assume. All as soon as a boy gets married, he is dedicated a small hamlet where there is a kitchen in the forefront, and the same hut elongates and it becomes a bedroom or a room or whatever segregations you want to create, because definitely they don't have drawing rooms and living rooms and then different rooms for kids. No, but they did have electric cookers, I saw, but they had a chula, and the chula was not at all the simple chula I have seen in our modern civilized villages. They were different. They were very efficient. They had two burners with the with minimum amount of woods. They could lit up two spaces, two stoves, I would say. I don't know what to say and write a language for it, but instantly you can cook 2 to 3 meals. You can make chapatis at one space, one stove, kind of a thing, because they know how to utilize the minimum resources. They know how to use that small amount of logs, and make sure that the fire is lit. They used to have a different kind of lifestyle where 7 or 8 o'clock they are having their meal, and then they are going to sleep as soon as the sun goes down. What we are today preaching about, sustainability, about minimalism, I would say they already follow that. They already have that. But are we, what we are trying to learn from them, it is question for us. Do we really want to have that life? No, we are the people, those who are believers of hoarding. I would know. I will also, take this blame. I'll not blame anybody else. But we are believers of hoarding things. We want different kinds of caps, different kinds of watches, different kinds of clothing patterns, bags, whatnot. But what we are trying to find out from them is not something we want to follow. So what we are talking about, sustainability, indigenous knowledge, we want to extract. But I want to raise this issue that uh, I wonder, I'm afraid that if we'll get to know the right indigenous ways, will we use it in a right manner? Will we really use it for anything good? Or else we just want to extract what medicines they want to use from the, how they can, extract, how they, use the forest produce for their sustaining livelihood, for medicinal purposes. Do we just want to extract something for our benefit, or we really want them to grow? Because if we want to grow, I want to give this I don't think, I don't know whether I'm taking too much time, or I'm okay. uh,
You're
do I
fine.
have?
You're fine.
But one kind of sustainability, really wanted to give this example. So last year, there was this Panch Pran, a new, government's initiative where we used to, make sure that all of our students in our university, all departments came up with this idea of we'll take 5 pledges. So it was related to how we'll be good citizens and everything uh, good, nice, and healthy for the society. But what my professor, I'm an assistant professor in journalism department, and Jammu Kashmir is a very diverse space. So we have a lot of languages, a lot of because there is, the terrain is different. So there's mountainous region, Kandi, arid land. So we have a lot of diversity within Jammu also. So there were some students, those who come from some tribal groups. So Bakarwali, Gojri, these are some of the languages which are not in the schedule as such. They are obviously they are not in the schedule. But what ma'am did, that we will, how many languages Jammu can represent, we can do it in India also. We usually do it in India, we can do it pan world. what she did on a very micro level, that all of these students, those who are tribal also, they never used to represent their language, because languages they use are Hindi, English. They try to mix up with the same kind of, heard those who can speak and write in these two languages. But ma'am said no. I would like to take her name, Dr. Garima ji, because it's her brainchild. We should give credit to such people. There's no, she's not even from our department. There's no benefit she'll derive from this. But she came up with this idea that all of these students will speak or take these pledges in their own languages, and and as soon as they'll say, we will also repeat it in their language. That kind of inclusivity we want. Then we are, sir mentioned, my fellow panelists beautifully mentioned the education system, what role they can play, and when we can provide such, representation to them, that they can speak in their language, they wore the kind of attire they wear there, and they represented their language, and it was not a cultural activity. It was not at all a dance or a folk song presentation. It was their language which was being presented. We all tried to repeat after them, and have this inclusive setup, that such kind of environment. And everyone, there were some administrative officers also in that very small program, but it was very impactful. We get to know about different languages around us. We adapted and we spoke Gojri and Bakarwali, which otherwise have a lot of taboos in our society. A lot of time, these when we want to include them in our setup, there are a lot of taboos, because they practice with the same kind of taboos the caste system had, same kind of taboos the class system had. They also have that same kind of inclusivity barriers. So when we include them, are we really bringing them among us without taboos? So that has to be taken care of. Otherwise, their indigenous knowledge system, their sustainable development, knowledge system will not be able to be part of our culture, because when we bring them with taboos, we actually push them to the edges where they cannot be part of our system. They will be shy, and I think they already are following a minimalist life. But we have to see, after so many researches, that do we really want to follow that lifestyle, what we are trying to find, and we are milking something out of it. But we have to see it very wisely, that we are not exploiting their culture and trying to drag them into a developmental race where they will not be part of it, just be exploited. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing all those views. I think, like from what you said, we need to have a redefinition of the word development when it comes to tribals, and like they can teach us a lot about what we say as modern day consumerism, overconsumption of all those products. So with a minimal lifestyle, if they can manage it all, like why can't we? So so we move on to the question answer session. Antara, please introduce, start off with the questions.
My first question is to the first speaker, Mr. Raju Dhuli. And the question is, as you have mentioned earlier, the title for your talk is Empowering Tomorrow's Leaders, Tribal Educational Schemes and Increasing Awareness Among Tribal Youths. Could you mention some of the key objectives of current tribal educational schemes and how effectively these schemes are being implemented at the grassroots level?
Yeah, of course. First of all, thank you for asking me this wonderful question. It's really interesting question, also very relevant to the today's topic and presentation as well. When we talk about the key objectives of the current tribal educational schemes, these schemes serve to improve upliftment and also empowerment of the tribal youth by by developing infrastructure, talk about building schools in rural areas, tribal areas, and then ensuring that these tribal students are equipped with the necessary facilities with respect to education, and also building, providing accommodations to students from remote areas to ensure they can attend schools regularly without any fail. And also another objective of these schemes are where it is another form of providing assistance, financial assistance to the tribal students to reduce economic burden. If they want to get education, economy is one of the major factors. In order to reduce that financial burden, it is important to provide scholarships and stipends. So this is another objective of the present or prevailing tribal educational schemes, and also these schemes also aim to provide free books and educational materials. That's also very unique objective of these schemes. When we talk about on the second part of the question, which is about how effectively these schemes are being implemented, being implemented at the grassroots levels, we can implement these schemes at the grassroots level by community engagement. While presenting my presentation, I pointed out one point that through training programs, skill development, and also what is that, awareness campaigns. With the help of these three things, we can also implement these schemes at the grassroots level. So this is the answer to the question. Yeah, I hope I have been able to address your question.
Yes, your answer your answer had answered my question, and thank you for that. It was really enlightening, and I think our audience will agree to that also. Now, Barsha, please
Yeah,
ask
thank you.
the question to the next speaker.
So our next question is for Margaret Lyngdoh. So in your article, Spirit Possession Among the Khasis, Representation of Fear Through Narrative, you have pointed out the existence of Puri, female entities from the water who ensnare men and drown them. So can a parallel be drawn between this Khasi tribal belief regarding Puri and the siren that forms a part of the Western mythology? If not, then how do they differ?
Thank you so much for your question, Barsha. I thought about this question and I realized that the premise of the question itself is comparative. And while there is absolutely nothing wrong with taking always a comparative approach, putting this against that, and how do we look at this in the light of that? Why can't we look at things in context of where they emerge? And when I say this, I'm thinking about the siren as a group of women who lure sailors to their death by singing these beautiful songs, all right? And I'm thinking about Puri, and their enchantment is a little different because you see there is we're talking about liminal ontologies at the moment, so I and you, Barsha, we are speaking in this reality, okay? Mundane reality. And parallel to this is the reality that all of us, fellow panelists, moderators, all of the listeners, we all go to when we fall asleep, okay? So a liminal ontology is a place that is not easily accessible, but within altered states of consciousness, you're able to access it. Okay, like we think about shamanic soul flights also in the same context. Now, what Puri do is that I also mentioned this idea of Khasi personhood. So Khasi, the Khasi indigenous community from northeastern India, they divide a person into Med, Mensem, and Ringeo. Okay, what this means is that breath, body, and then there's the Ringeo. And Ringeo is something that is untranslatable. And I'm not going to do a disservice to the term by trying to translate it, but it means that aspect, the third aspect of Khasi personhood, that, if you, that will protect you from somebody else's malice and intentions. So, Puri, what they do is that they enchant the Ringeo of men, women, and there is that love, okay? And so during sleep, the Ringeo of the man or the woman who is enchanted will go out and join the Puri, and they'll hang out in the liminal ontology. So that's how the Puri works. So this is a little different somehow. Yeah, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
definitely, ma'am. Thank you so much. I was a little bit confused regarding these entities. So thank you so
No worries.
much. So my next question is for Ms. Kumerjit. So, in your research, you have talked about the affordability of modern gadgets among various communities. In that context, what challenges have you witnessed the indigenous communities face in the event of rapid modernization? Can mass media help them in preserving their culture?
Thank you so much for this very interesting question. Uh, Indeed, there are a lot of researches right now happening about the impact of media or use of media and penetration of media. But how exactly they are part of media is also a big question. Some of the researchers, if you will go through them, you'll find out that the representation, they don't have a representation. They have a very minute representation because of lack of exposure, lack of even interest to go there. As my first fellow panelist mentioned, that their parents, their attitude towards knowledge, in education, because will they be accepted in the society after that? If I'm just educated but I don't have that social background, will I be really accepted in a multinational company? Will I be able to speak in that way? Will I be able to, have the same kind of conversation? So that somewhere put them, at the back seat. But when I try to understand that what kind of penetration social media, digital media have, they have accounts in social media. It is very strange to understand that. But as we know that most of our social media handles, we'll be able to operate them, create them with the help of Gmail. But when I asked them, do you have a Gmail account? They said, no, I don't know, or I don't have it. But they did have Facebook, they did have Instagram, some of the youngsters, I would say. And rest of them, the people above 40, 45, 50, they do have access to YouTube at least. They watch different news channels, but their constraint is the language. So they do understand little bit of Hindi, little bit of not English. That was one constraint. So they do watch some of the national Hindi news channels. They watch some of the local news channels, but in one limited language in which their knowledge is also limited. So some terminology can have, which can happen to anybody also, a literate person also. But what they were missing is some news channels, some portals, some information or entertainment in their own local language. But the constraint is who will create that? Already their population is so not a lot. So among them also, how many of them are woke enough to represent? How many of them are ready to have that, struggle in their life all alone? That yes, I was a herdsman like 5 years back, and now I want to be a journalist. I want to be a news anchor. How many of you are ready for that? So that uh, my like that privilege, the concept of privilege also comes in between, and the use of social media is there. They have started using consumeristic shampoos and conditioners as well, but are they ready to contribute back? The social media provides that platform, but they are not ready to, even if they are ready to, but they are not able to, as sir mentioned about the skills. So digital or media literacy is still lacking. So whenever a group is not able to represent their culture, their indigenous knowledge, it will eventually die down eventually. And as we know that knowledge, indigenous knowledge, has reached us because it was communicated in oral form or in they was inscripted in one way or the other. But if their culture will not be able to communicate to us, eventually we may forget it. But as soon as we get to know about a certain problem, as I have raised today, as sir raised today about, and ma'am raised about the environmental consciousness, that social media has created uh, that space. But I have to mention that it has created extremism as well. So they have created their own groups as well, where they are communicating among themselves also. So still we are creating that glass ceiling for them also. We are not creating it. It's just social setup where they feel safe not to speak to other people. They feel safe when they're talking to people of their own homogeneous community. So what we wanted to do uh, is still not, we are not still there. it may take a little bit more time. As I have said, if we are able to include them, if we are doing more researches, we are having more discussions about it, definitely we'll be able to reach. And then social media and digital media and technology will be able to, bridge that gap. That's I think. I hope I am around your question.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for the information and and informing us about all the research that is all going on regarding this problem of translation and media literacy. So, Antara, please over to you now.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank you all of you for answering the questions. We have this diverse type of talk today, and that helped us to get new aspects. And I think our audience also will also say the same. And with that, we come to an end to tonight's discussion. I thank each one of you for sharing your knowledge and valuable insights with us. I'm sure our audience had a wonderful time and have learned a lot as well. We are grateful to you all for taking out time of your busy schedules and for being a part of this discussion. It was an absolute pleasure to have been in your company this evening. This is to remind that we are calling for submissions on tribal history and tribal representation in history, the details of which can be viewed at www.tellmeyourstory.biz. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Bye
Thank you so
bye.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you.